I ask everybody to stand, please. Good morning.
Good morning.
Hello, Madam Speaker, members of Parliament, members of the Senate, Elder Doug, and esteemed guests. Thank you for being here today. My name is Jasmine Kay, and I've had the incredible privilege of being the chair of the Canadian Youth Climate Assembly. We're looking forward to this next hour with you. But before we get into that, I've been asked to remind everyone of some housekeeping rules. So, while in the Senate chamber, please no food or drink from outside. Although water bottles with lids are allowed, no hats. Please no photos or videos except from our official photographer. This is not allowed in the chamber. We also ask that everyone please respect the senators' desks and privacy. So, to our guests, to our assembly members, when speaking, stand, please. This will signal to the folks in the AV and Tech to turn on your mic, and so they know whose mic to turn on. Speak slowly and clearly when you are speaking. Only use the interpretation headset when you are listening and seated. Place the headset in that very exact spot when not in use, and make sure you've taken off the headset before you speak. Keep phones away from mics, and avoid shuffling papers in front of mics. And while we're at it, everyone take a minute and just make sure your phone ringers and any notifications have been turned to silent. Thank you. So, in a minute, Senator Coyle will provide welcoming remarks and a land acknowledgement. I will introduce the Assembly members and tell you a bit about what we've been doing. And then, the Assembly members in the front row will stand one by one and read out a section of their report. Following this, there will be time for parliamentarians and guests to ask questions or share comments with the members about what they've just heard. Speaker Gagné will share some closing remarks, followed by a short closing ceremony from Elder Doug, who helped us open up our time together on Wednesday. Following this, there will be a ceremony of appreciation with a presentation of certificates. There will be a group photo with parliamentarians and Assembly members. And then at 1 p.m., Assembly members will leave the Senate chamber. Thank you. Now, I would, with great pleasure, welcome Senator Mary Coyle to the front.
Thank you so much, Jasmine. Madame la Présidente.
Madam Speaker.
Sénatrices et sénateurs.
Dear Senators.
Esteemed members of the Canadian Youth Climate Assembly, all honored guests present, and those with us online today. On behalf of Senator Jim Quinn, co-chair of Senators for Climate Solutions, and myself, I'm delighted to welcome you to the Senate of Canada this morning. Together, we are making history with this important youth, climate, and living democracy initiative. I would like to now invite all senators and MPs to please rise to be acknowledged. Thank you, colleagues. Thank you for being here. Et un grand merci.
And a huge thank you to Speaker Gagné.
Partners in this assembly, Environmental Leadership Canada, and MAS LBP, and to the Assembly's Advisory and Oversight Committee. Thank you to all of you for your incredible professionalism and all of the hard work that has gone into this Assembly to this point. And thank you to my team and to the whole Senate team for making today's gathering possible. Really appreciate it on a Sunday morning that you could help us. As we gather here in our nation's capital, in this Senate chamber, I would like to start my remarks by acknowledging and honoring the people of the Anishinaabe Algonquin Nation, on whose lands we are meeting today. And I would like to acknowledge and honor all First Nations, Inuit, and Métis peoples. This Senate chamber is located on what was once the concourse of Ottawa's Union Station. Think about that, the concourse for a train station. We're meeting where Sir Winston Churchill, King George VI, and the king of rock and roll himself, Elvis Presley, all arrived here by train. Before being transformed into this beautiful interim home of the Senate of Canada, this building housed the Government Conference Centre, where the 1981 constitutional talks were held, which led to the repatriation of Canada's Constitution and the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms, being entrenched in that Constitution in 1982. In the front of the building, we had a little competition today with the Army Run, but in the front of the building, you will find the monument of the famous five, the women leaders who championed the persons case, resulting in 1929 with women being considered qualified persons. Imagine that, women, qualified persons, and therefore eligible to be appointed to the Senate of Canada. So here we are in this historic place, at this critical moment for our country, for our planet, and for all of us. We're all keen to see Canada develop a prosperous, future-focused economy and a healthy, sustainable society. Canada has a new government. Here in Canada and around the world, we all know that we're experiencing increasingly severe impacts of climate change. The Canadian Climate Institute warned this week that Canada will not meet its 2030 emissions reductions targets, and I know you've been talking about that. Against this backdrop, we are convening Canada's first ever Citizens' Assembly on Climate and welcoming today's most important guests to this Senate chamber, the over 30 members of the Canadian Youth Climate Assembly. Welcome to the Senate of Canada. These young leaders have been working hard, and I know, because I popped in. I didn't want to be an influence, but I popped in and out several times since they arrived here on Wednesday, and saw them hard at work. It's not easy to answer this central question. What do young Canadians want Parliament to do to meet Canada's climate commitments in a way that reflects their values and their priorities? This Canadian Youth Climate Assembly is an unprecedented opportunity for us as senators and members of Parliament to hear directly from these young leaders who've come to us from every part of our country, from coast to coast to coast. They've been learning together, deliberating together, discussing trade-offs. You can only imagine. We know about trade-offs. And finding ways to come together on their priority recommendations, which we're about to hear. One of my favorite quotes, colleagues, is from Moses Cody, the namesake of the institute I used to run in Nova Scotia. He said, "In a democracy, the people don't sit in the social and economic bleachers. They all play the game." I can't think of a more powerful, effective, and meaningful way to invite young Canadians to help inform and influence Canada's climate policy agenda than this Canadian Youth Climate Assembly, and to be hosting it here in Canada's upper chamber of Parliament. The word Parliament has its origins in the French word parler, meaning to speak. So it's appropriate for me to soon hand the proceedings back to Jasmine so that our Canadian Youth Climate Assembly members can speak. Maintenant, c'est votre tour.
It is now your turn to speak.
Matters to us. It will inform our work as legislators, and I can assure you that the members of Senators for Climate Solutions and the All-Party Climate Caucus are ready to listen and to act. Nous écoutons. Merci.
We are listening.
Thank you, Senator Coyle. I would also like to begin by acknowledging those who made all of this possible. We thank the Speaker of the Senate for making us feel very welcome here in the chamber. We're especially grateful to you, Senator Mary Coyle. Your tireless work, together with your colleagues from Senators for Climate Solutions, has brought us here. And we thank our funders and program partner, ELC, Environmental Leadership Canada, without whom the Assembly would not have been possible. Now, it is with great pleasure that I introduce you to the members of the Canadian Youth Climate Assembly. They come from every region of Canada and are broadly representative of its socio-demographic diversity. They are diverse, too, in their understanding of climate change and their engagement with climate action. They started as strangers and stand today before you today, ready to speak with one voice about one of the most pressing and polarizing issues of our time, climate change. Citizens' assemblies are long-form deliberative processes that bring together a randomly selected group of everyday people to learn, deliberate, and make consensus recommendations to public bodies. They are particularly well-suited to values-driven conversations and decision-making. This assembly has spent 35 hours together learning about and deliberating on climate change and climate action so that they can deliver recommendations on how Canada can meet its climate commitments in a way that reflects the values and priorities of their generation. They were randomly selected through a civic lottery from a pool of more than 700 young people, all aged 18 to 25, who put up their hand for this opportunity. It turns out that youth, contrary to popular belief, are not apathetic when it comes to issues around climate change. This is the first Citizens' Assembly on climate change in Canada, and it is the first in the world of this age group. It joins a body of more than 170 other Citizens' Assemblies from around the world. And some of these assemblies have helped break political deadlocks on climate action, have promoted a more aware and politically confident citizenry, and have helped increase the legitimacy and public acceptance of social action on climate change. While I will be pleased to turn over the mic to the Assembly members in just a minute, I do want to take a minute to recognize and acknowledge their work, particularly over these last 5 days. It's not just the substance of what you have developed that you should feel proud of and that we should all listen to. It is also the way in which you went about doing your work that stands as a model to us all. There has been so much goodwill, patience, active listening, and more than a touch of respectful disagreement. But they have also found a great deal of common ground. You will hear pride and confidence and an expectation to be taken seriously. Their generation, as will the generations that follow them, will bear the brunt of decisions made today. They want Canada to meet its climate commitments, and they're ambitious and they are realistic. You'll hear their suggestions for what this generation thinks Canada should prioritize in meeting its climate commitments. And yes, it's about a reduction in greenhouse gas emissions, but one that is coupled with recognition and respectful relationships with First Nations, Métis, and Inuit peoples, with support to workers and communities, and an investment in what we know already works. This generation wants better preparedness so they can adapt to the effects of climate change being felt now and are expected to intensify. And they want accountability and engagement that will rebuild public trust in our systems of government and spark meaningful conversations about climate change and how to address it across the country. Some of the details in the report may not be perfect, but they believe, the team believes, I hope that you believe, that what they have done is important. There are 5 sections to their report: who we are and why we volunteered, what we learned, our priorities, principles for parliamentarians, and the recommendations have been grouped into 3 focus areas for this assembly. The first one is about preparing for climate risks. The second one is about reducing emissions in the oil and gas sector. And the third one is all about climate accountability. And so with that, one by one, I invite the members of the Assembly to share their report with you.
Good morning, parliamentarians and invited guests. Thank you for inviting us today to present our recommendations. We are coming to you from the most rugged wilderness of the North Territories, the soaring mountains of the West, the golden fields of the prairies, the rushing rivers of Quebec, the endless windy shores of the Atlantic provinces, and everything that's in between. We are all different, coming from diverse backgrounds, but we all call Canada home, and though we are here from very different backgrounds, all of us are united while standing in front of you today. We have our differences, but we all agree on the severity and urgency of the climate issues. We've experienced firsthand the effects of climate change impacting our childhoods, our education, and our careers, and we know not enough is being done. That is one of the many reasons why over 700 young Canadians applied to be here today. Our small sacrifice of our time and effort away from our routine is because we are committed to seeing change.
Au cours de cette expérience,
During this experience, we learned that Canada did not meet any of its climate targets so far. We are seeing disasters caused by this, notably forest fires, permafrost melting, and intense storms and floods. We also see individual and national consequences. We are growing in a world where technology and communication are everywhere, and that's why we are disappointed that youth opinions are not being listened to, even though we know that it is very easy to communicate today. Our group saw climate protests in Ottawa while we were here, so we know that lots of people are fighting to be heard. We are the next generation. We are the ones who have very little faith in the political system because we saw very little change and very few real actions. We hope that our presence here today will help to spur that change for us all in here today, but also for future generations. We hope that our recommendations will have a true impact. Thank you for taking the time to read our recommendations with care. We hope that you will consider our voices.
This Assembly understands that climate change is not just about the environment. It is deeply connected to every aspect of our lives. The conversations we had around a just transition towards greener energy sources highlighted the urgent need for upskilling and reskilling workers in impacted sectors. From our understanding on the impacts of colonialism and capitalism have historically disadvantaged communities, we need to ensure that no one is left behind. We also heard powerful insights from Indigenous speakers who emphasized both the importance of Indigenous ownership and resource management. There are ongoing barriers that prevent many communities from achieving true prosperity and sovereignty. These perspectives made it clear that equity and justice must remain at the center of climate and solutions. We also learned that parliamentarians are ordinary people who care about the future of Canada and are willing to go beyond partisanship barriers to work for a common good. Whether between youth and decision makers or between private and public sectors, it is clear to us that collaboration is both essential and achievable. Parliamentarians showed us they are willing to be allies, to listen, and to advocate alongside youth voices.
Equally important, what we learned from one another also guided our conversations and learning. Youth in Canada are not apathetic. Each member brought unique lived experiences shaped by our upbringing, education, and communities. We have our differences in regards to region, socioeconomic standing, education, language, and indigeneity, but we found ourselves united by a common goal to build a just, green, and sustainable future. We are ready for the challenge and eager to lead with innovation, openness, and dialogue. This assembly proved that youth are not only prepared to demand solutions, we are ready to be part of them.
Nous sommes la génération.
We are the generation that will have to live with the choices that are made today. As Canada attempts to meet its climate targets, these are our priorities. Voices, representation of the youth. The youth want to be actively involved in decision-making on a constant basis, and we want to have a true role at these decision-making tables. Young people have skills, innovative ideas, and other opinions. It's important to recognize our reality that is both urban and rural, and the demographic weight of our voices. Accountability, action, and confidence. We're seeing the problems and the inaction from the government. This is all eroding our work. Young people want to see tangible measures, transparency, and independent supervision or monitoring through constant, continuous supervision. Nonpartisan approaches are essential. Innovation and energy transition. It's important to be bold in our transition to slowly do away with our reliance on fossil fuels and to decarbonize our futures. It's essential to make our system that actually meets our future needs in a sustainable way. The approach needs to include research, development, and public participation so that everyone can understand what works and what does not, including through inspiration gained from what's being done in other countries.
Justice, equity, and Indigenous sovereignty. Climate action should be inseparable from justice, equity, and reconciliation. Leaders must recognize that issues are systemic, interconnected, and shaped by historic and ongoing systems of oppression, including colonialism, capitalism, and the patriarchy. Youth want action that puts Canada on pathways that address such root causes. Youth support the creation of openings for Indigenous people to take ownership and leadership in the renewable energy transition and move towards economic reconciliation, recognizing that Indigenous communities are more impacted by climate change and are being continually displaced from their lands. Preparedness, safety, and resilience. Youth want coordinated approaches between federal, provincial, and territorial governments, as well as Indigenous nations, for disasters and emergency preparedness and supports in their aftermath. We must ensure that all communities across the country are resilient to climate change impacts, including economic and mental health challenges, and that barriers are addressed. Education, literacy, and awareness. Education and early and ongoing exposure to nature are key to long-term climate responsibility. Misinformation, especially from social media, is damaging our sense of collectivity. Public awareness, education, and media literacy need to be strengthened and implemented in classrooms across the country. Existing resources must be more accessible to all.
The Canadian Youth Climate Assembly has identified 6 principles that we believe should underpin the decision-making of parliamentarians. The principle of collaboration means all levels of government coordinate efforts, learn from each other, and promote accountability. This is important because all parts of our country experience climate change differently, and we need to work together to address the issue. The principle of intergenerational resilience means parliaments think beyond electoral cycles. This is important because making proactive and adaptive policies that extend into the next 7 generations is the only way to meet our long-term goals. The principle of systems thinking means parliamentarians consider how all systems and sectors impact each other. This is important because historic and ongoing structures have shaped who is disproportionately impacted by climate risk. Applying a root cause analysis ensures that decision-making meaningfully anticipates ripple effects. The principle of transparency means parliamentarians actively communicate the issues they are working on, including the processes, stakeholders, evidence, and reasoning involved, in a way that is timely, clear, and accessible. This is important to foster confidence in democratic institutions and inform public participation in the political process based on common ground. Pragmatism means parliamentarians consider logical options and take meaningful action. This is important because we want to see change, and to do that, we need to have defined objectives to increase the odds of success. The principle of nonpartisanship means parliamentarians balance the needs of all people in Canada for the common good. This is important because partisanship and personal interest should not impede long-term sustainability. The principle of equity means parliamentarians consider the diverse needs and lived experiences of all people and ecosystems in Canada, and ensure that policies are community-focused, targeted where needs are greatest, and guided by Indigenous practices. This is important because when everyone's needs are met, Canada will be more inclusive, cohesive, and empowered.
Our recommendations for addressing climate risks are the following. We urge parliamentarians to ensure that all governmental departments take part in the production of an annual comprehensive report that assesses climate risks and their economic impacts at a national scale in order to ensure that we can consider them in economic decision-making with full transparency. We urge parliamentarians to review, in collaboration with farmers of varying scales and agricultural unions, the existing agricultural policies. We want to ensure that government invests in sustainable agricultural practices, incentives, and proactive protections for farmers to both support their well-being and create adaptable and resilient food systems. We urge parliamentarians to invest in the creation of a national standard or an intergovernmental agency to ensure federal, provincial, territorial, local, and Indigenous governments collaborate to maximize the efficiency of communication, resource allocation, and initiatives to prepare for and respond to emergencies and disasters.
We urge parliamentarians to mandate and support the provision of continued and long-term mental health resources across provinces and territories so that all Canadians can access care from climate-induced trauma, distress, and duress. We want to see an emphasis on community wellness and making resources available virtually and in person to allow all Canadians to stay connected. Such resources include hotlines with an option to call or text for individuals struggling due to the effects of climate change, websites with related resources, and support groups where people can share their own experiences. We urge the Senators for Climate Solutions to strengthen and invest in incentive programs to ensure that communities adopt retrofits and sustainable technologies. This will improve the safety and resilience of existing infrastructure, such as public spaces, homes, and businesses, so that communities are better equipped for extreme climate disasters. We urge Senators for Climate Solutions to collaborate with provinces and territories to enforce and advance the development or redevelopment of resilient and sustainable infrastructure in communities impacted by climate emergencies that ensure sustainable, long-term buildings to reduce the costly cycle of frequent rebuilding.
These are our recommendations for reducing oil and gas emissions. We urge parliamentarians to review legislation to support transit-oriented development, supported by frequent, high-speed, electrified transit along existing right-of-ways to enhance regional connectivity. This is important for energy-efficient development in order to reduce strain on our energy grid. We urge parliamentarians to review the Building Canada Act to prioritize supporting provincial and territorial projects that are focused on building and electrifying regional energy grids powered by clean and renewable energy sources. This will encourage equitable access to clean energy across and between provinces and territories and lead Canada to a more sustainable future. We urge parliamentarians to encourage interprovincial and interterritorial cooperation on connecting east-west and north-south energy grids to ensure grid resiliency as we move towards renewable energy sources. We urge parliamentarians to review existing industrial electrification efforts and to invest in those that are currently reliable. Investing in what we know works provides a more efficient direction for government funding and other resources. We urge parliamentarians to create a mechanism similar to the Ontario Sunshine List to transparently report on transactions using public funds between government and public, such as climate action incentive payments, and government and private contractors, like payouts for carbon credits. This will help reduce misrepresentation and misunderstanding of policies by ensuring the public can get the accurate and full financial picture of Canada's climate policies.
Nous appelons les parlementaires.
We call on parliamentarians to recover these lands and administration of lands to Indigenous communities. This is essential to a respect for sovereignty and self-determination for Indigenous groups. There's also the issue of governance from nation to nation. This will mean that Indigenous groups can play a central role in clean energy. It will foster economic reconciliation and social reconciliation, will strengthen self-determination for communities, and create a better future. We call on parliamentarians to broaden and develop programs that encourage the creation of decent and sustainable jobs in all provinces and territories, including specific initiatives for young people, such as the Science and Tech program. Programs should also focus on supply and link these programs with what is available to young people. There's a high level of unemployment among young people, and we need to make sure that there is a fair growth in youth employment as we move along with our clean energy goals.
Excusez-moi.
My apologies.
Désolée pour.
My apologies for this technical issue. We would call on parliamentarians to reduce the costs borne by industry on consumers to protect the most vulnerable in our society against the increasing cost of living. We call on parliamentarians to support initiatives that foster diversity of means of communications, traditional media, social networks, and the university networks, so that there is information out there that is based on actual evidence having to do with climate. This would be made openly available, transparently available. The idea of turning away from oil and gas would allow Canada to effectively invest in emissions reductions to meet its greenhouse gas emissions targets. It is essential to fight misinformation and strengthen public trust in order to gain buy-in from people and in order to decrease our greenhouse gas emissions. We call on parliamentarians to review current regulations in order to guarantee that the government will reduce its support and subsidies to the oil and gas sector, and that any further subsidies would be linked with a direct reduction in greenhouse gas emissions. This will mean that the whole system will be more efficient.
Voici nos recommandations.
These are our recommendations for climate accountability. We ask the government to cooperate with provinces and territories to focus on integrating awareness of nature into school curricula. We call on members and senators to make sure that any climate information is available online to reduce the impact of misinformation on Canadians. To this end, we recommend an increase in federal funding for local media sources so they can sustain an independent, reliable, quality information source. We would also ask that C-18 be revised to make sure that it meets its objective and doesn't further online misinformation. We call on members to make sure that departments focus on local, low emissions goods in their supply systems, focusing on quality, Canadian-made, low-emission options rather than focusing on high GHG emission goods from elsewhere. The government would be showing the way and ensuring more sustainable sources of supplies.
Equity in decision-making. We urge the government to ensure that Indigenous nations have informed equity in and decision-making power throughout the development of all major projects in a manner that is consistent with the UNDRIP Act. This is powerful because the empowerment of Indigenous nations is climate action. We urge senators for climate solutions to raise public awareness of Canada's existing Commissioner of the Environment and Sustainable Development, ensure its independence by reporting directly to Parliament, and clearly differentiate its role from other bodies. Strengthening its visibility, oversight, and public engagement will hold the government accountable on climate actions and build trust with Canadians. We urge parliamentarians to require large corporations, high-emitting industries to disclose all their emissions, Scope 1, 2, and 3, in a publicly accessible manner to increase transparency and accountability. We urge government to meaningfully engage youth early in decision-making processes in a demographically representative, low-barrier, and inclusive manner. This will build policies that reflect the perspectives of young Canadians, reduce systemic barriers, and contribute to a resilient democracy.
Ladies and gentlemen. Good job, guys. Beautifully done. All right. Now I think it's a little time for Q&A. I would like to invite Speaker Ghani if you have the first question.
Je vois que mon micro est...
I see that my microphone is on.
Thank you so much. Merci pour ce...
Thank you for this gift.
Us, I think that we will be able to make sure that the recommendations we follow up on those recommendations. Ces recommandations sont.
These recommendations were well thought out, and I thank you for it. So I have a question. I will read it in English and French.
In French and English. Alors, vous avez évolué aujourd'hui.
So you are in a quickly evolving world, and a world in which social justice, climate justice, and the consequences of the pandemic on the economy and society have left a mark on your generation. How do you experience this change? And for you, is this an exceptional opportunity to change the course of history and to choose new values, or is this a reason to despair?
World in which climate change, social justice, and the impact of the pandemic on the economy and society have left a lasting mark on your generation. How do you view this situation of change? Do you see it as an exceptional opportunity to change the course of humanity and adopt new values, or as a cause for despair?
So who would like to answer a question? Please put your hand up high. All right. I'm going to invite Ajit. Okay. So I'm going to ask a member to stand. Sure, go ahead, Ajit. Maybe introduce your name, say where you're from, and then respond to the question.
Hi. Thank you for your question. My name is Ajit. I'm from Charlottetown, PEI. Something that we discussed quite a bit over the past 5 days was how much the current crisis that we're experiencing now is not so much exceptional as it is a product of our current practices and our current systems and the current way that we do things. And so we wanted to invite everyone sitting here today to look at our recommendations and look at the situation we're in right now as an opportunity to examine the ways in which the way that we currently do things has led to the crisis that we're in now, and use this as an opportunity to be open for some more radical changes, because we're not going to be able to, deal with this crisis by just doing what we've been doing. We have to, try some new things.
All right. I invite. Yes, please.
I'm going to ask my question in French. So my name is Julie Méville-Dechaine, and I'm a senator from Quebec. I was very interested in all your recommendations, and particularly in the suggestion to have a mental health hotline available across the country. I would like to know about your thought process, because to reach this recommendation, you probably had to reflect on your own mental state facing this climate crisis. So I'd like to know how you reached that recommendation, and do you find that we are lacking mental health services? Who would like to answer?
Clearly, who would like to speak? All right. Victoria, go ahead. Yeah.
Thank you. My name is Victoria Romero, and I'm from Winnipeg, Manitoba. And we know that sometimes it is more easy to see that climate change may have physical impacts on our health, such as, inhaling wildfire smoke or changes in heat and temperature and staying warm. But the impact on mental health is so great, and it cannot be ignored. It is not simply a crisis that we can handle or that we can deal with in a reactionary way, but we must be proactive in offering these supports. We heard not only from people in the group who shared their opinions, but also from experts who talked about, the different experiences and how communities that had been flooded out still to this day, when they hear there's going to be a thunderstorm or there's going to be rain, they have, anxiety that is so intense that it interrupts their daily life. We know that the rate of people reaching out for mental health help in Fort McMurray following the fires was a huge uptick. And it's not just people who are impacted by natural disasters, but also those who, have a deep understanding that they may soon be impacted by those natural disasters, or by agricultural scarcity, or by just the ways our planet is changing that are not sustainable to human, plant, or animal life. So while the suicide hotlines or other initiatives are great and should stay in place, there must be a more proactive approach that deeply considers the implications that climate change can have on all of our lives.
Yeah. Just what about the youth? You talked very well about what you heard, but what about you? What about the young people and their mental health?
Hi, I'm Tari and I'm from Saskatchewan. Climate change does impact mental health a lot. Specifically where I'm from, we're very agricultural. We have a lot of mining. There's oil everywhere. These past couple years have been extremely hard in our area. I've grown up on a farm. We have had a terrible drought. Sometimes when you're farming, not having a crop is the difference between being able to have food for the next year. For me, it's, can I still go to for post-secondary education? Can I physically afford it if we don't do well? The smoke, too, has caused so many different health issues in our area. It's been tragic. To expand more on the agriculture, I truly hope none of you guys have had to experience some of the stuff we've had, but I know some days I'll be at school, I'll get a phone call saying, hey, our land is on fire, you need to get home right now. It was one of those calls you really, truly do not ever want to have. Or other times I'll be doing something in the yard, doing some fixing. You'll look out and you see smoke coming from your neighbor's yard. It is devastating when you sit there knowing there's nothing you can do but just watch as something that is so vital to the community go up in flames. It is, honestly, it is so bad. And then I see that's my experience, but then I hear, as I had a friend that had to stay and live with me because her house was also going up in flames because she lived up north. She didn't know if, when everything was done, if she would have a place to go back to. It's simple things like that where I mentioned two stories. One from Saskatchewan, and I'm sure everyone else here has had different experiences. But it's just knowing that everything is out of your hands and you just want to be able to say something more and you don't know how. Thank you.
Senator Jim Quinn from New Brunswick. First, let me start by saying thank you so much for taking the time out of your summer to do what you've done, because this is an important contribution for all of us here and those of us who aren't here today to listen. And I know that the report will be widely disseminated so that people can take advantage of seeing all of the recommendations that you're making. One of the things I'm wondering about a little bit is that two or three of you mentioned collaboration between various levels of government, including First Nation governments, and the importance of what I believe is one of the fundamental things that we don't take enough attention to, and that's traditional knowledge. So bringing all of that together, how can we, of my generation and your generation, better inform and educate those who follow you? Because those are the next folks rapidly coming through this system, and it's almost like we need to have a movement to make this issue that much higher in everybody's mind. How would you suggest that we do that?
Hi, my name is Graham MacDonald. I am from the Yukon. I think there is a problem that happens when we try and bring in, say, cultural or try and make cultural values a federal issue, because there's so many different Indigenous groups in Canada, and yes, they have. I'm not sure that what they have in common would be any more different than how we do things now, as with respect to traditional knowledge, because there are people all over the place. I think what that comment was also referring to especially was that there are places where the communication infrastructure is not very good. So back home, we don't have cell reception, and there was a forest fire going on. It wasn't threatening the community, but nobody was notified. And there was this risk that, and people were getting very severe anxiety about their home going up in flames. There was no risk of it, but the damage done and the distrust towards the government, because it wasn't clear to the First Nations government, or the First Nation government people, where to ask for that information, and it wasn't clearly disseminated that there was no risk posed to people's homes, and people were just seeing a fire burning and nobody doing anything about it. But it posed no risk physically, but the mental health implications of having nobody there to assure you that everything's going to be fine was itself, and there was no mechanism for the government to go and, or the First Nation government to go and find that information and disseminate it, because First Nations people tend to go to their First Nation first. They don't go to the federal government. They don't go to any other government. They go to their government because it is their government. Thank you.
Just a brief follow-up. Thank you for that. I'm going to come back again to the younger generation. You're all getting older too. What do we do about those who are coming up through the system? How do we? And when I say we, I'm not talking about the federal government necessarily, or but how do we? How does our citizenry across this country turn on the young kids who are coming up through the system? How do we better inform them? How do we sensitize them to the urgency of the issue?
Lily,
I also missed the last two words of your question. If you could repeat that quickly.
How do we get the people in Canada to better sensitize and inform younger people about the urgency of the situation? Because those are the leaders. You're the future, and those behind you are the future as well. So how do we build the momentum to get this issue to the level of seriousness at which it needs to be taken?
The urgency is there. I mean, I don't think that there is a lack of urgency in the younger generation. I think that it's the older generations that need to create spaces to hear that urgency. I mean, we're looking at, sorry, my phone's buzzing really loud. We're looking at 36 people from across the country, and not a single one of them has zero empathy towards the situation. We are all concerned. And that's like a group of 36. I take another group of 36, all of those people will also be concerned. It's things like this where you guys are actually able to hear us, and having more open conversations and casual third-party spaces for younger and older generations to connect is what's most important. Because again, the urgency is there. We already do care, and we do have a lot of ideas, but it's falling on deaf ears at a certain point. So, yeah.
Quebec. So first, I just want to say to my colleagues that I don't know none of these young people, so I haven't talked to them. That's my first thing to say. Thank you so much. I agree 100%. Yeah, I said who I am. With what you have said, I agree completely. So several times you have mentioned that we are not going to reach our emission targets. And our Prime Minister is saying, let's don't talk about targets, let's concentrate in results. He's saying that, agree with that, let's concentrate in results. When we look at the other members of the very chic G7 countries, we see that Canada is lagging behind in many aspects. And you have mentioned it at several occasions that just now, that your words are falling into deaf ears. So my question to you is, what is wrong with us? Why we are not moving? The tsunami is here. I was in Victoria, I was in Vancouver, I was in Whitehorse, I was in Pea Island. I saw smoke everywhere. Why? And insurance is running away. What's wrong with us? Be honest, be bold, tell us what exactly and concretely you are expecting from me and my colleagues. Thank you.
Liam, I'll invite you.
Hello, I'm Liam Breckenridge from Fredericton, New Brunswick, and I believe the issue is that we are turning this issue into a partisan issue. That every single person in Canada is going to be affected by climate change. It is not this group's going to be affected, this group's going to be affected. It's everyone. And I do not know why, but we are turning it into an issue where we just want to fight about it and not do anything. And we're tired. We are so tired of having it be just everyone fight over whether or not we need to do something. We do. It's there. There's so much evidence that it needs to be done. And we're not doing anything, really.
We have 3 more minutes left in the Q&A, but I will share with folks that I believe after we leave the chambers, there is definitely an opportunity for folks to connect with each other more informally. So I'll take the speaker in the green, yes.
Thank you very much. My name is Andrew Cardozo. I'm a senator from Ontario, and I'm going to be a bit of a Debbie Downer and talk about the other youth who don't share your view. So there was a poll out last week that suggested that 34% of Canadians feel that climate change is a hoax. En français, le changement climatique est un canular. But among young people, it was 46%. So my question to you is, are you, like the 700 of you who applied, you're not climate skeptics, but there's a whole lot of people who probably are. So my questions for you are, is that what you're seeing? Is there growth in skepticism? Are people more concerned about something else? Why is that happening? And how do we talk to those people who are climate skeptics?
Hello, my name is Cassiana, and I'm from Charlottetown, PEI. I'm going to keep this very brief and very quick. If my other assembly members would like to add, I'd appreciate that. But I wouldn't necessarily call it skepticism or apathy. I would just say it's fear and hopelessness would be more of the reason why they would just give in to the reason of believing that it might be a hoax. So that is, and we've talked about it, we've talked about the hopeless parts, we've talked about, the reasons why fellow youth might think that. And I just think that it's more so what my colleague said. We need to do stuff, but we're not doing enough. And that's what's perpetuating that hoax idea. So,
Thank you. Merci. Merci tout le monde.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you to the youth in this country. It's incredible.
Work you've done. I've been working on climate change since 1986. I am clearly a failure because we knew all this. We signed the UN Framework Convention on Climate Change in 1992, and the issue was not partisan then. Brian Mulroney, majority, progressive, conservative prime minister, led the charge at Rio. We have been, and I'm going to just name it and ask you because I disagreed profoundly with my colleague and friend from the Senate, Senator Quinn. We don't put this on young people. By the time the kids younger than you are old enough to do something, it'll be too late for any of us. And we know this. The window is closing on climate action, but it's not too late. Le temps presse,
there is no time left, but it's not too late.
Ask you how you feel about it. This is not an issue without villains. The villains are the criminal class called the fossil fuel industry, and they have been targeting youth deliberately lately with messages that climate change is real, it's burning fossil fuels that causes it, but it's too late. When I found that the fossil fuel lobby was targeting young people to make you despair instead of protest, well, you can see I get angry. But if anyone feels like speaking to that question, these criminals have names and addresses, and we know what they've done. And the International Criminal Court has now said countries that contribute to the climate crisis and deaths around the world can be held responsible. So any response?
Okay, I'm going to go to Hargun. Yeah.
Sorry. Thank you for that question. I think in our assembly, we had some pretty robust discussions about climate literacy and how information is not provided to youth in a way that's like either accessible or accurate. And that issue largely stems from casting doubt on facts and reasoning that should never be argued in the first place. So things like statistics or information regarding the amount that we're emitting or information related to the carbon tax become facts that we're debating rather than numbers that we're just providing. I think the solution lies in presenting youth or the younger generation with information that isn't debatable, where we're debating applying policies rather than the data that is being created to actually create that policy in the first place. And the way that we make sure that those arguments aren't debatable is to create systems where we're introducing information in an objective manner, which will be reflected in our recommendations. But I do think that the skepticism largely stems from the fact that accurate information ceases to be credible when you start to have polls however many people, but 1 in 4 people believe in climate change. I feel like that poll in and of itself is kind of silly because climate change exists. So if you ask people for their opinion, do you believe in it or not, you turn that into a debatable issue. That better question to ask is, how do you think we can solve climate change, rather than do you think you believe in climate change? Because belief shouldn't necessarily be a question in the first place. I think skepticism, in the older generation, is a result of the fact that we're questioning bare minimum reasoning. Okay, yeah.
Thank you. I would now like to invite Speaker Gagné.
Senator Coyle, honorable collègues,
honorable colleagues, distinguished guests, and especially dear members of this youth group, thank you for joining us in this upper chamber, an important side of our democracy, in a way that we can focus on our present reality and our future. Let me start by thanking these young leaders that are taking part in the Canadian Youth Climate Assembly. Your commitment, your open-mindedness, and your will to do the work, sometimes difficult work. The fact that you're willing to listen, to learn, and cooperate, this is something that you can truly be proud of.
Is a powerful example of democracy in action. One that brings together a diverse, representative group of young Canadians from across the country, from different provinces, territories, communities, and experiences. You didn't all arrive with the same views, I'm sure, but you shared a common purpose to help shape Canada's climate future. and you've done just that. As parliamentarians, we have a fundamental responsibility to reflect the voices of all Canadians. That includes young people. Your generation will live with the consequences of today's decisions more than any other. That means your voices aren't optional, they are essential. And let's be clear, this is about more than consultation. It's about real participation. It's about bringing youth into the legislative process, not just as advocates, but as partners. Climate change is one of the most urgent and complex issues we face. It affects everything: our economy, our health, our communities, our future. We need solutions that are informed, inclusive, and grounded in lived experience. That's exactly what you've provided here. To Senator Coyle, thank you. Thank you so much. Your leadership and vision made this possible. You continue to show how Parliament can be a space for innovation and inclusion. I extend my sincere thanks to your team, the Senate staff, and everyone who contributed to making this event a success. To Mass LBP, Environmental Leadership Canada, and the Senators for Climate Solutions, thank you for building a process rooted in trust, dialogue, and respect. And to every member of this Assembly, this is just the beginning. We are listening, and thank you for your tireless work.
Dear youth, rest assured that I am listening, carefully listening to your remarks, and I thank you for your passion and for your dedication. Thank you. Miigwech.
Thank you. I would now like to invite Elder Doug to share a few words of closing.
I gotta put my speech away. It's getting smaller. Miigwech. Kikinen wat kamamanan. Kigaran kazat. Thank you for your willingness to look after the land that we call Earth. Thank you for your courage. Thank you for your imagination. Thank you for your curiosity. Use your ears to hear the voices, that just like your voices were heard today. Use your eyes to put a roadmap forward so you can see where you want to go, where you want to take the people of Canada. Thank you for looking after me. When you want to take that adventure, you're looking after everybody. And I want to say this to you. Go for it, because you all matter. Miigwech.
So now we're going to begin our appreciation ceremony. So I'm going to ask, what I'll be doing is I'll calling out member names, 6 at a time, to come to the front and receive your certificate and take a photo. Senator Coyle, Senator Quinn, and Emma. Okay. And Speaker Gagne. Yeah, I think so. Yeah. Yes, please. Yeah. Ajit, Brendan, Dana, Dylan, and Gloria. All right, so I'm going to call up the next 6. Gloria, Hallie, Hargun, Jessica, Kelsey. 4, 5. And Kessiana. Okay, Lauren, Liam, Lily, Lister, Louis, and Lucas, all the L's. Okay, Mina, Mohammed, Natasha, Nathan, Noel, and Perla. So, Raphael, Rebecca, and Rebecca, Sean, and Sebastian. As well. And lastly, Stephanie, Tari, Toshiba, Victoria, Wilfredo, and William. Oh, he's not here. Okay. Well, so I think now we're going to do a group photo, is my understanding. So we're going to give Patrick a minute to race on up to the gallery. Yeah.
So if everyone can fill in this area here, we've got all the way up this side. Just try not to go too far past the table.
Yeah. Yeah. So parliamentarians and assembly members, please join us at the front for a group shot. Yeah. Yeah. seat again, please. I'm going to ask everybody to please take your seat. Yeah,
So it's about
I'll ask everyone to take their seat. Yeah.
information that's getting out to people is
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Oui. Yes. So, close. We'll close now. Yeah. So my understanding is now that the Assembly will take their leave of the chamber. Yeah. So I'll ask members to rise, and we can head out.
I need my directions. Thank you.
So I'll ask the members to head out. And wait outside. Yes, and wait outside. Yeah, no, I told them, yeah.
Thank you so much.